Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today on the Updates 1.91 dev server, we're having a look at the new naval vessels that are coming to the game in Update 1.91. The first one is the American USS Atlanta, the CL-51. It's a light cruiser that is coming to the game at 5.3, surprisingly, and it is coming before the Brooklyn, which is sat itself at 5.7. The USS Atlanta has access to 8 sets of dual-purpose dual 127mm guns, and you can effectively get 14 of these guns on a target at once, which is insane. It doesn't have access to too much secondary armaments though, only has 3 sets of quad 1.1 inches, which sits around the place right here, and also right here, and also right here. So not a ton of AA cover, but enough to do a decent amount if anything happens. If we have a look at the general armor layouts of the USS Atlanta, it does have the anti-fragmentation armor, which is very nice for it, and also it has the anti-fragmentation armor for the viewing post, which is right here. And in fact, inside it has 2 smokestacks which connect to a bunch of different engines. And of course, having 1,627mm, a ton of ammo storage all over the place, which is wonderfully modeled on these machines. As we get larger and larger machines in the game, you only have to appreciate the amount of effort and work which is going into these machines. They're so beautiful. They are absolutely stunning when it comes to it. So the modifications for this machine, you should be used to the 127mm. If you've used stuff like the Somas or the Sumner, they have access to HE, SAP, and also HEVT, and then it has access to some torpedoes. So the torpedoes themselves, you can actually not take. According to this, you don't have to take the torpedoes with you. You can choose not to take them. I would say you should always take them though. You have 8 torpedoes, so 4 a side, so not a ton of them, but enough to be able to finish a target if you need to require. And the main reason why you would use a vehicle like this is the fire rates which you find on the 127s. We're going to have a look at a lot of big bruisers when it comes to the game in Update 1.91, and I left it on night by accident. So actually no, let's just take a few shots at night because it'll look really nice and make sure to change it for next time. So that destroyer is for 4,800 away. Oh, yes, baby. Doesn't that look absolutely stunning? Ooh! Oh, it's so nice. Look at that. So you've got a full barrage going on over there to that destroyer. He's having a bad time. We're just HEing him to death. And the fire rates on these guns is absolutely insane. Like, compared to a lot of the other light cruisers and heavy cruisers that we're going to be having a look at. So, oh dear. So that's going to be its main thing, you know, to be looking forward to. You can also maybe tell the slightly different audio stuff which is going on with this ship, which is always nice. And yeah, unlucky for that. They've also changed how the shots look when they hit things, or at least it seems to be that, which is also nice. So a lot of firepower coming from this, a lot of sustained firepower. Maybe not the biggest punch in the club, but if you go 5 rounds with this thing, it's going to batter you to death. The next one is kind of the opposite. We have the Hipper. Now the Hipper is the first heavy cruiser that is gracing our shores for the Germans. It has 4 sets of dual 203mm, 6 sets of dual 105s, 6 sets of dual 37s, 10 20mm, and 2 sets of quad 20mm. This thing is stacked to the teeth when it comes to guns, and I even missed another quad 20mm which is on this machine. So it's just covered in detail, it's covered in different types of guns, it is just covered in everything, and it looks so beautiful in the game right now. And it does have access to also 80mm of armor on it, which also includes some other armor under it as well. So it has the 80mm, and it has a little bit behind it and a little bit behind that. So it goes 80, 50, and then in certain areas 10 on top of that. This is going to be a tough nut to crack. And the 203mm, they pen 993mm with the HE, but the AP, they pen 430. 430 millimeters. God damn. And then, of course, they have HE with a base fuse, which pen 93 millimeters. So this is just going to eat stuff alive. They also have access to 12 torpedoes. And it is kind of nice that you don't have to bring torpedoes if you don't want, but I think, you know, most things should be able to bring torpedoes. They're in sets of 3. You can find them here, here, and then here and here, and that is your complement of 12. But my god, is this thing a monster with just a beautiful design to it. And we'll just fire the guns just to give you a general idea of what they feel like, and the fire rate as well, because the fire rate on the Hipper is obviously nowhere near that of the Atlanta and the Brooklyn, which is why I think machines like them are still going to do incredibly well. But the secondary armaments that are available on this machine, with the 105s, with the 37s, with the 20s, they're just going to batter everything when it comes to either small ships or when it comes to anything else. There's even as you can see, a quad 20 on one of the main 200mm turrets, which is just hilarious. So let's just line up the guns. They're a little bit slow, but they line up okay when fully upgraded. So that guy is 4,800 away. Goodbye, guns. And you can see that they are moving in for the kill and doing a ton of damage as they go. The only problem, as I said, is the reload. The reload on these guns is quite long, but if you are able to nail somebody with a barrage like that with all guns, then you should be able to knock out the majority of their machine incredibly quickly, just like we saw with that destroyer with that barrage. So if you want to see what the side view of this is, it looks absolutely beautiful, even in the daytime. And of course, all of the smaller guns are having goes too at the machines that you see over here. So the light cruiser, we're a little bit off because we weren't aiming properly, but you can see the reload is just, it's a little bit slow on this, you know. But if you can get that good hit percentage when it comes to landing your rounds, you're going to do a ton of damage to whatever you hit. So there, we didn't get the decent hits, but it sunk the light cruiser because I think we detonated it. So yeah, that's going to happen too. I have no idea where half those rounds went. They just went flying through the air. But there we go. Target is destroyed. The Hipper is here to stay with its heavy cruiser nature. Big old machine, which I'm very happy to see. The Soviets get a light cruiser, the Chapayev, with its 4 triple mounts of 152s, 4 dual mounts of 100mm, and 14 mounts of dual 37s. So it has a lot of AA cover, has a decent amount of secondary armaments in the 100mm, but the 152s is where it's at. Obviously, it's not as powerful as something as the 2 machines that we just saw, but it is at 5.7, and it also has a decent amount of armor, a 100mm belt all around this, with 120mm on the front, I believe, because you have the 100 and then the 20, and of course you have 130 around the areas here, the ammo elevator. And look how much detail is put into this thing. Like it's an absolutely just stunning ship, just like they all are. It has a ton of ammunition storage all over the place, and also a massive amount of engines, meaning that it can go 60 kilometers an hour and has obviously a crew of over 1,000, like all of these machines pretty much do. So the 100mm are sat in the center with the main guns on the front and the back. So in order to broadside, in order to get the majority of the guns on target, you're going to have to broadside, and a lot of the 37s are sat near the back of the machine and also around the side right here. So not too many looking forward, but the main ones covering the sides. So they're going to be great AA cover for your machine. If we look at the 152mm, it has HE for 72mm a pen. It has an APC BC shell with 285, then it has an SAP BC with 200. Then of course you have the HEDF, so the HE with the time fuse, 72mm. So you're going to struggle against a lot of light and heavy cruisers with that, but the AP should be able to get you home. The British get the HMS Arethusa. Now, the HMS Arethusa is probably one of the weakest out of the ones which are being added in this update. It has 3 sets of dual mounting 6 inches, 4 sets of dual mounted 4 inches, 2 sets of quad mounted 40mm, 5 sets of 20mm, and 4 sets of dual mounted 20mm. So a decent amount of secondaries. You can see once again on the top turret that we have a mounting for it. So you have the 6-inch mounting, then you have the 20mm on top of it. it. It must be awful being on this gun. But you can see in the center, this is where the 40 millimeters find themselves. These actually are huge 40 millimeters. The L60s, my god. So at least when it comes to AA fire and secondary fire, you have a lot going on with this machine, and also you have a bunch of torpedoes as well, with 3 of them per side. So yeah, it may not be as strong as some of the other machines that we've seen, but it is still got an okay amount of armor, it's got a decent amount of speed, and already, you know, the British have a lot of light cruisers to their disposal, so it's just adding to that list. The HE pens 72 millimeters, and the 6-inch with the CPBC or the SAPBC pens 203. So we're just going to test sail it just to show you the guns and also all the secondaries that go on with it, because obviously it's not just about the main guns, but with these larger ships, a lot of the time it does feel like that. And oh, I forgot to mention this. So if you didn't know, they've added in a new sound. So if you change your speed, have a listen. So do you see, as you change your speed, it gives you the little ding, which is very nice. You know, it's an incredibly nice little little thing that they've added, which is wonderful to see. But it's not a huge change, but it's always nice for that little immersion factor when it comes to it. So the 6 inches that you see here, they have a decent fire rate, obviously better than the 203s, but worse than the American guns that you'll find. So you can still put a bunch of damage down, and also, you know, of course, use the torpedoes as you feel like it. The secondaries are really where it's at. Unfortunately, it seems like the sound for the secondaries for me is just not working properly right now, but I'm sure when the update comes out, that's you know, it's going to be okay. The next nation is Japan. The most recent nation added to naval forces, and it actually gets 2 boats. So you got this Saionin, which has 2 120 millimeters, 5 sets of triple mounted 25s, and also a turret of a 25 millimeter. So this actually finds itself in an interesting place. It puts itself between the T-51B and the Matsuki, so it bolsters that rank 2 area that we've seen in naval forces, and it sits at 3.3. So if the way I describe this is, if you played the River class, which is the boat which just came out for Operation Heat, this vehicle feels very similar to that in many ways. So if you're used to that idea, then you'll be used to the Saionin. 2 very large caliber main guns, a bunch of secondaries that'll keep you alive, and also a bunch of depth charges which you'll never use. So yeah, the 120s have HE and also 54 millimeters of pen, and also some HEDF. I generally just prefer HE. Also has access to a bomb mortar if you want to use it. Looks pretty serviceable as a machine. The only real armor it has, or extra armor I should say, is the armor around the 120s, and there is only a gun shield on the front one, there isn't one on the back one, so make sure to keep that in tow. It does have 23 millimeters of steel hull and also 8 millimeters of steel structure, and it has a very juicy ammunition rack in the front, so make sure to try and keep that covered, otherwise it's gonna get eaten. Now, talking about being eaten, how about a predator? The Mogami. The Mogami is coming to the game in in update 1.91. Now, I thought the Hipper had a lot of main guns. Well, the Mogami has 5 sets of 200mm dual-mounted guns. 5 sets of 200mm dual sets. 3 on the front, 2 on the back, and they absolutely annihilate anything that they hit. But there is a caveat, and the caveat is the reload rate on these guns is really, really slow. So therefore, you have a really big one-hit punch, and you've got to make sure that one-hit punch counts. You also have 4 sets of dual Type 89 5-inch guns, 4 sets of dual 25mm, and 2 sets of dual 13.2s. So you don't have as good secondary armaments as some of the other machines that we see out there, but it should be serviceable enough. And also the Citadel armor on this thing. It has 105 and 140 and 35 on it. It has a lot of armor on this machine compared to some of its compatriots. So this really is a heavy cruiser. It doesn't have as much crew as others, and also the smokestacks. Like, look at this. It's a ton. It's like 5 smokestacks put into a singular overall funnel, leading to a bunch of different engines, and this thing going at 64 kilometers an hour. Obviously, the fuel tanks all around the transmissions and everything basically mean that you have an extra layer of armor before it hits your engines and stuff like that, and it's just a marveling sight to see. The Mogami finally being in game. When they started talking about the heavy cruisers, I should have actually showed the shells. When they started talking about the heavy cruisers, the Mogami, at least for me, was the first on the list to be added, and well, we see it already. So the 203mm have 93mm worth of pen, 364mm on their APBVC, and then 203 on the HEDF. The 127mm has HE and HEDF. They both have 54mm of pen, and you get D4 rounds for both of the other guns. So the Mogami is at least looking like my favorite ship of the updates. Maybe the Atlanta actually takes that just because of the crazy fire on the guns. Because I feel like with the Mogami, it's just going to be a little bit painful trying to get these guns on target, because you can see how slow they are, and I'll show you the reload rates as an issue as well. You can already see the secondaries just taking apart the other guys. You can see the little smoke effects from the guns. Oh, and also, if you want to see the smokestacks, they look pretty cool too. So we nearly have all of the guns on. The back guns are taking way longer than the front guns to get on, but they will do eventually. And we should have everything set up. You can hear a plane, but none of the guns are firing. So let's make sure we're set up. And fire! Massive blast of 10 200mm guns, putting massive holes in that destroyer. Hopefully no destroyer ever has to see this thing, because as you can see, that dude is pretty much crippled from just one barrage. But the reload is long. It's incredibly long for this machine, so that is just something that you're going to have to get used to. You can see just battering these machines is very easy to do. This one is 6,500 away, so we'll correct it a little bit more, just so the shells have a little bit further to go. Still not reloaded, right? Still not reloaded. So let's see how long it takes to reload. It's taking probably around 20 seconds to reload these guns. So you're talking about 3 shells a minute for these guns, which is just not really good enough for these huge machines, and unless they can take a lot of punishment, because obviously they're going to be targeted by other light and heavy cruisers, so we'll see how it goes. But you can see it does do a ton of damage when it feels like. It's just, I'm worried about its reload. It seems incredibly long, which is a problem that a lot of these Japanese machines have. It does look absolutely stunning though. Very happy to see it in the game. Like, it is just an amazing machine to behold when it comes to it. So those are the new ships that are coming to the game in 1.91. The Chinese, even though they're getting a ground forces and an air forces nation, they are not getting any fleet, so instead we just have the other ones. Hopefully we'll see Italy and France soon when it comes to their nations, but instead we have a bunch of light cruisers, we have a bunch of heavy cruisers. They're all incredibly fun. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.